We are going to be discussing Shavuot. Right, and you've heard a little bit about Shavuot when we discussed counting of the Omer. Right, so we know that God has made a link between Pesach, asked you to count days, okay, and we looked at the testings, and we looked at the trials, and we looked at how God revealed himself more and more to these people because he wanted them to understand that I've never just pulled you out just to free you, I've pulled you out for a purpose. I agree. And then he goes up and he says, all right, now you will bring them up into my mountain. Okay? Why is it important?
That's what it's supposed to be.
Oh yes, but that's nice. Why couldn't we get the Bible be given at...
Because it was a promise. It was, God said he would bring Moses back as a sign.
Right. So to reaffirm for Moshe, he said to him at the burning bush, he says, you will bring my people back to this mountain and they will worship me. Understand how big that was for Moses who was going back. Now remember, we have two interpretations of what he said when he said, I can't speak good. Some people believe that it was a stutter. Yes, he spoke like that. He believes it was a stutter, or maybe because he grew up in an Egyptian household, in Pharaoh's household, he spoke very little Hebrew, and he was very fluent in Egyptian. So how can I go back to the leaders of the Hebrews, and they're going to go, you're not even one of us, man, you don't even talk like us, you don't even sound like us. When you were running out, you didn't even look like us. Remember, it was so completely contrary to the way he appeared. He is a prince of Egypt and thus was decorated as such. Remember, body hair was not something that they took pride in, so they shaved everything. And they dressed in a specific manner. And they got to this point where you go in and he says, I'm a Hebrew. Really? You don't look like a Hebrew. You look like you're still stuck in Egypt, that this is all you are. But God takes him away. 40 years of his life, and he goes and he comes back, maybe looking a little bit more furry. Understanding a little bit more about shepherding his flock and what it means to go looking after that lost sheep. He understands the difference between goats and sheep. How many of you in your spiritual walk have noticed there are some people that follow and some people that need to take a step and a stroll and a walkies and around and all the rest of it. And a little bit more, there's a nice Afrikaans word, woelig. A little bit more oomph to them. Let's say chutzpah. They don't want to really just follow the shepherd. They want to go and figure out. They want to go explore, even if it means they hurt themselves. We understand that some people are just a little bit more boisterous. And he understands this and he learns to love the flock. He learns to look after them. He learns to nurture them. He learns to lull them to sleep. He learns that he is a defender of his flock. And he puts his life on the line every night when he goes in. Remember, you're either using a shepherding cave or you're using a pen. Now remember, the sheep pen could be a man-made structure that looked like this. Okay, it would have a little roof on, just basically a way station. And they would leave this gap open. What would go in this gap? Shepherd. It would be his job to sit down, put his back up against this wall, put his feet up on that wall, and he would keep his sheep in check. And because they're primarily skittish animals, he would maybe sing a song to them. He would lull them to calm down. He would, do all the fun things that, as he's counting them in, maybe checking their ears, taking their eyes, checking their noses, all those really awesome shepherding tasks that guys have to do. And then once everything was settled down, maybe he would sing to them. David became a very good musician because he had a lot of free time. He'll leave you alone for a while with a harp or a guitar. Let me pass this one. And he learned to play. And he learned to play so well that, remember, he got invited up to King Saul. And maybe the music will calm the skittishness in this animal. And he was busy going through this, and you sit there, and Moses learns all about this. He says, before you can lead my people, you understand what it is to stand over people, and how you think it's going to be done, but understand, if you don't love them the way I love them, if you don't get into that place where you can just understand what it is to go looking for that lost sheep, understand what it is to be able to lead them, day in and day out, to put your life on the line for between you, lion, bears. You know, David had to kill both lion and bear. How many of you would think shepherding is, wow, this is now the job for me? How many of you have had to deal with leading or have led flocks of people at certain times and realized that, you know, maybe I need my quiet time and run away from it? Some of you are starting out in this little journey and you realize people are a little exhausting. It's an amazing thing how much time it takes to nurture your flock and to build them up and to get them trained to a point where they follow you and understand. I'm not just trying to push you and pull you and tell you not where to go. I'm trying to give you what you need right now and I'm trying to protect you. And unless you understand that, how are you going to understand how God takes you from space to space? You know, like I shared with you guys before, when you look at going to Israel and, you know, you would never take your flocks into, you know, the Golan Heights or the Jezreel Valley, because that's where you can farm. That's where you get food. You know, it doesn't help if you have really fat sheep and you starve to death. It's not going to be good for you. So you take them out into the wilderness. And you allow them to graze these little tufts of grass that shoot up underneath these little rocks. Moisture collects underneath the rock. And then comes in and creeps underneath it, and then that little moisture gets trapped over there, and then all of a sudden a seed comes up or a plant comes up, and it just gives you enough. One little mouthful at a time, one little tuft. And you would have shepherding lanes running across hillsides where sheep would follow a shepherd. And he would spread them out on the hillside, and they would graze an entire hill in that line. One mouthful at a time, getting you to the next place, to the next station, making sure that we have water stops along the way, and there are routes that are well understood. Because if you vary off it, maybe you start going into lion territory. Maybe you start going to a wadi. Right? Sharp cliff faces that flash floods happen. Or if you have like, say now if a sheep goes and you, well, let me ask the question. What's wrong with a sheep drinking by a waterfall?
His best water is underneath his chin, so it soaks up the water and gets stuck.
Yes.
And drowns, basically.
Drinky, wall pulls head into water. No snorkel. Very important. He leads me to still waters. Okay? So it's even the water that is supposed to give you life. This will keep you safe. But I need to be able to tell you which drinking hole you can go to. And he looks at Moshe and he goes, okay, my boy, you understood all of this. I've built you up. I've prepped you enough. Now you are ready to go back to my people. And he goes and he fetches him and he does Pesach and it's all crazy and amazing. And then he brings him out and he starts taking him to the Omer and teaching him station by station who he is and what he's going to do and how he sees them until he gets him up to this mountain. This amazing journey where, man, just 6 months ago you didn't believe there was any possible way you could get out of the hole you're in. How many of you have had those testimonies? You're sitting in a situation and there is no way out. And Abba just says, this is going to be fun. Hold this stick for a while, we're going to do some crazy stuff. But when you look back, you're going to know it was me. So he brings him out to this place. And again, you know what really touched me was, a couple of years back, I realized our mentality versus God's mentality was, we would have just run, got all this and said, Dad, bring that inheritance. Bring me that millions, Abba, and I'm going to go and I'm just going to go to this place and I'm going to buy my piece of land. I'm going to settle there by the, you know, where you gave Abraham that land, that's fine. Hey, I don't even know if somebody would have left Egypt if they were given wealth. It was comfortable. They understood it. They just thought, well, you know, the slavery thing is a little bit of a schlep. I don't really enjoy it particularly, so I'd rather be a priest or a doctor or one of those guys that do the mummy thing. That looks like fun. And they might be able to go out. And when they went into maybe Canaan, the promised land, oh, you know, it's lush and green, and I'm going to buy a really big piece of land over that valley, and it's going to have a really good time for everybody. How many of you stopped to ask, why did you free me? How many of us stop to ask the question? God gives you maybe a business, some money, a gifting, whatever. Am I the only suspicious one? When I was freed, when I was baptized, I stopped and I'm like, okay, God, if you're real, what do you want? Well, if you created me, if you saved me, if you died for me, what do you want from me? We never stop to ask that question. We're so busy rejoicing in the freedom and the extras and the blessing and all of this, and we just go, but what happens if you were freed for a purpose? What happens if you were given what you were given for God's glory? You see, and this is what struck me. They would have gone off and they would have run off and they would never have come back to Mount Sinai. They would never have come back to the place of the burning bush. They would never have received what we're going to discuss right now. And they would have just run off into their own plans into the wild blue and lived happily ever after. And they would have assimilated and nothing really would have changed except for this one crazy natural disaster time of I don't know what was going on there. Maybe the gods were angry or what. But there was this funny shepherding hairy guy who was an Egyptian prince once, who came back, shouted something like, let my people go, shook everything else, and now they've become Canaanites. Why did God bring me here? Why did God save me? Why did God make me? You know, we don't always get stuck and just stop for a second and think, out of all the millions of little itsy-bitsy cells that were swimming towards an egg, you were the one that won. Why?
We're special.
Why are you special?
We all have a purpose.
Right. You were chosen. Let's sink in. Hand-picked by Adonai. So you know what? My kingdom needs one of you. I have chosen you. I have saved you. I've brought you unto myself. And if you're willing, and we're going to do some crazy things. We're going to do some stuff that's going to reverberate through time itself. People are going to know me because of it. I want you to open up your Bibles to Exodus 19. Das durch das Cobwebs. Exodus. Yeah. Shavuot. Okay. Alright, so you are sitting now in the book of Exodus, you're coming in and he's bringing them back and he comes to them and he says, alright, before we get ahead of ourselves, how do we know this was the time of Shavuot? What does Shavuot mean again?
Festival of Weeks.
Festival of Weeks. What is a week in Hebrew? Shavuot. Shavuot. Have a good week. Shavuot is 1 week. Shavuot is weeks. Okay, so we can say it took them weeks to get there, or we can say they spent a really long time there. I personally believe it was the second one. They spent a long time sitting at that mountain. Okay? Otherwise known as what? New Testament. Pentecost. Right, Pentecost. What does Pentecost mean? 50. That's what Pentecost means. So what has 50 got to do with weeks? 7 sevens. He says, linking the two from Pesach, Passover, he says you will count 7 sevens, 7 weeks, and it'll be 49 days, and on the 50th day, you will celebrate. Okay? So he links these two together. These are not this whole process from the very beginning of God coming in, from the time at Mount Sinai to Mount Sinai. This is all God getting ready. But he was already preparing Moshe for 40 years before that. And he was already preparing that when he spent the first 40 years in Egypt as a prince. You know how they think, you know how they operate, you know what gods they serve, so you're going to understand what I'm going to do. You're going to be able to walk into the courts of Pharaoh himself because you understand how it works. And because you're a prince, you have sort of authority to do so. You can come into that place. But don't worry, Moshe, I had to save him first when he was born. And don't worry, this only came after the time of which I promised Abraham that they would be in Egypt for 400 years. He says, your people will be in bondage, in Mitzrayim, until the wickedness of the Amorites comes to pass. So everything is building up to this one point. God has been waiting. He's been checking. He's been making sure that these guys are watching closely. Will you recognize the time? You know, when Daniel and them were in Babylon, and God said, you're going to be there because you didn't let my land rest. 490 years, so I'm going to take those. And it's going to be 70 years in bondage. For every year, my Shabbat, my land will rest, so I'm going to move you out. They started counting when he said, now's the time. There was anticipation. Abba is going to move, and he's going to move soon. I don't know how he's going to do it. He's looking at the scriptures to try and figure out, trying to look what he's going to do. Could you ever anticipate a Moses Passover moment where God shook heaven and earth, pulls out this little nation like conquering heroes, teaches them all about himself, and he brings them to the mountain? And this is my happy place. Exodus 19 verse 1. In the 3rd month after the people of Israel left the land of Egypt, the same day they came to the Sinai desert. After setting down from Rephidim and arriving at the Sinai, they set up camp in the desert in front of the mountain. Israel set up camp. Moshe went up to God, and Adonai called to him from the mountain. Here is what you are to say to the household of Yaakov and tell the people of Israel. Please notice, he doesn't just say Israel. Why does God mention 2 houses? The household of Jacob and the household of Israel.
Because there's a mixed multitude.
Right. Because when they left Egypt, there was a mixed multitude of Gentiles that left with him. And then they said, this God is real, our gods weren't. Many of you guys had that realization. Whatever you thought was God, for me it was, okay, the world was God. So I ran around doing whatever I wanted to do, and then God was real. The God of who? The God of Israel. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeshua. And then I started to follow him, right? So he goes in and he mentions 2 names. This Yaakov, the man Jacob, had 12 sons. and we called his name got changed to Israel. We talk about the 12 tribes, right? So if I can sum up that entire statement with that, I don't need this. It almost seems redundant. And we can make the argument that God likes to reiterate things. In the Hebrew